This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the gun guy. As you may or may not know, something cool happened yesterday, and that is Judge Roger T. Benitez, a federal judge in San Diego, actually did some serious damage to the California ammo restrictions. We're not done yet, so don't go away because we still have some fighting to do. But I did contact Rick Travis from CRPA right away last night and ask him to come on today, and he's kind enough to do that. So I'm very grateful to have Rick with me. Rick, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with this law right now?
Well, as you refer to him as Judge Benitez, there's many in our community that are now calling him Saint Benitez because this is the same judge that handed down Freedom Week a little over a year ago in April. So obviously he loves April decisions. But that was the judge that allowed us to be able to go out and buy what we call standard capacity magazines. The state had mislabeled as large capacity or high capacity magazines when they're in fact standard capacity. This ruling was to strike down the Prop 63 ammo restrictions that had been put in place. And one of the quotes that Judge Benitez came out with that I've just loved using all day long today and last night is that criminals, tyrants, and terrorists do not do background checks.
Well, as a matter of fact, I printed out the first page and a half of his decision because I stayed up last night till 1 o'clock in the morning reading it. And,
all 120 pages.
I did. I read the whole thing. You know, at the last part, it was about 1 a.m. and I'm kind of going, but I did it. He did a marvelous job with this. And so just so if you'd like to read it, I'll put a link in the description so you can actually go to Michelle and Associates and you can actually read the decision if you want. But the beginning is really interesting. He starts off by saying the experiment has been tried. The casualties have been counted. California's new ammunition background check law misfires, and the Second Amendment rights of California citizens have been gravely injured. In this action, plaintiffs seek a preliminary injunction in joining California's onerous and convoluted new laws requiring ammunition purchase background checks and implementing ammunition anti-importation laws. For the reasons that follow, the motion for preliminary injunction is granted. And then he starts off by listing some basic reasons why. And the very first one is, he says, these new laws are constitutionally defective for several reasons. First, criminals, tyrants, and terrorists do not do background checks.
Right.
I read that and I thought, oh, that's, yeah. Do we need to go any further? That's as far as we need to go. But he did go on for 120 pages. He channeled Johnny Carson at one point and mentioned Karnak, the man magnificent, which I absolutely loved. I strongly suggest if you're watching this that you go read the decision because it's magnificently written and it's going to be very difficult, I think, for the opposition to prevail depending on which court this ends up in. If it goes to the Supreme Court, I'm not seeing his decision being overturned, but it would immediately go to the ninth, wouldn't it, Rick?
Yeah, it immediately would go to the ninth, but I want to stop. What you just said is so important for people to realize a couple of things before we get into the nuts and bolts of this. Number one, this didn't happen overnight. We have been fighting this for well over a year and a half. It's also the point that what people need to realize is it wasn't just the California Rifle Pistol Association, the National Rifle Association, and several plaintiffs that include the Olympian, Kim Rohde. It includes other people that have come on with their businesses. And it includes all the volunteers and members of those organizations, Gun Owners of California. I know you're going to have Sam Paredes on later in the week. All of those people collectively came together as a team. And this is what we got to get. Many of the people listening to your show aren't a member of those teams. Many aren't, and we're thankful for them. But those that aren't, you need to join the team because there's a team of people that are fighting us. And I think one of the most important things to note is what has been the result just in the last 24 hours. So if you look at the framework of Sacramento, their argument nationwide, Gavin Newsom's, Becerra, our Attorney General's argument is California is a state of people who do not believe in firearms. That is the foundation of their argument for why they do what they do. Yeah, if that's true, then why a year ago during Freedom Week did Californians buy up more magazines than the other 49 states combined? We literally cleaned out the nation's warehouses. Why is it that now Californians are buying up ammunition and even out-of-state ammunition vendors were running out of 9mm and a lot of the other common rounds before noon today. That can't happen unless there's a lot of people, not just a handful, not just a couple thousand, but millions of people in this state that are saying, hey, we don't like these onerous restrictions. And now that they're off and we're unshackled, we're going to exercise those rights. And I think this has to be something that pumps up your listeners and everybody they know, because we're not alone in this state. We have lots of brothers and sisters, and we need to rally those troops. And we just had almost 1 million new brothers and sisters come in since this COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, I think it's also important. First of all, it's interesting how many people have commented back to me today, because I posted on our Facebook and Twitter account, I posted to my Patreon followers and so on, that this law had been suspended basically for the moment. And the interesting thing is the number of people who commented back today, okay, well, I'm going to join CRPA. Well, yes, and I'm very grateful you're going to do that. Thank you very much. But it's a little bit like closing the barn door after the horses got loose. The reason why the battle has reached this point, the reason why we've gotten this far, is because people have been faithful members of CRPA, Gun Owners of California, NRA, GOA, and all the other groups who have come together to fight this battle. So when each one of those groups, I had somebody comment to me that today that NRA was disingenuous by saying this was a victory for them that they had participated.
That's not true.
That's not true.
They have helped to finance this case from day one.
Right. And so I think people may have heartburn with NRA because of Wayne LaPierre's salary or whatever. I certainly have heartburn with Wayne LaPierre's salary, not NRA. But we need to give credit where credit is due. CRPA, Gun Owners of California, NRA, there's a lot of groups that have been involved with this. NRA has been a big part of it by financing it. These lawsuits cost a lot, and this has been going on for a long, long time. The fact that Kim got involved, Kim Rode, or Rhodey, however she says her name, she's a delight. Anyway, I've only met her a couple times. But the fact that she got involved was key, and there were some other people that got involved that were key. So I urge you, if you haven't already gotten into the fight, please do. I will put links in the description for CRPA. Please join if you haven't. I'm a life member of CRPA. I'm also a member of Gun Owners of California. I'm a life member of GOA. I'm a life member of NRA. And I'm a life member of Second Amendment Foundation. I try to support as many of them as I can, because I realize that each one does something special and each one does something unique the other one isn't as good at, and they all come together and they fight as a team. So it's super important what Rick is saying. We cannot constantly be dividing ourselves, and we generally are. Right. And we got to stop that. We got to come together as a group of gun owners, regardless of what part of Second Amendment we like or don't like, or which organization we like or don't like. We're a team. Let's fight as one. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm on my soapbox again. I've been doing that a lot lately. I apologize, Rick. So where did we go? So first of all, what exactly did Judge Benitez do? And where are we now at this moment?
So at this moment, while we're talking right now, Californians can go to their local FFL gun store, a sporting goods store that sells ammunition, and purchase it without going through the background check, which is amazing. Freedom once again restored. You can also go online and try to find ammunition to buy. While I was trying to buy some myself this morning, I was amazed that even 6.5 Creedmoor was disappearing before my very eyes. So I kind of expected that with 9mm, but I was watching the hunting ammunition fly off the shelves as well.
Yeah, I bet.
So I was like, I thought I had more time to look at that, but I didn't. So, I did my buying and got what I needed. But this is really important, because I think the juxtaposition of this happening and COVID-19 at the same time has really demonstrated to California gun owners and to a lot of people that were sitting on the fence to get off that fence and say, I've got to make a stand and I've got to do what's right. And it's been amazing. You're always going to find people in the woodpile that are against you on any subject, not just ours. But, the number of law enforcement people that have told people, because we've heard this at gun stores and stuff, you need to go buy a firearm because I may not be there for you. It's like, that's honesty. I think that's those law enforcement officers need to be praised for being honest. And that has caused a lot of people to go, wow, this is what it's there for. And then they got met by all the onerous restrictions that Judge Benitez correctly lays out. And he correctly goes on, to say that this whole thing defied common sense. It was severely burdening to our Second Amendment rights of every responsible gun-owning citizen. And as you know, because you've read the decision, he highlights a couple of people in there. And one of them is a veteran who has served his country, has a silver star, has a Purple Heart, which means he bled for this country. And he was unable to buy ammunition because, he had the unfortunate happening in his life that he was adopted. And because he was adopted and didn't know his real parents, he could not get a passport because he can't get a birth certificate because those files are locked up. So here we have a decorated veteran who's law-abiding and has done everything and then some for their country. And he points that out. He points out that how the system in DMV set up for the real ID and the California IDs actually has been there to help limit our rights and make it harder for law-abiding citizens to be able to purchase things. And I just challenge everyone to go and read this because it will strengthen our conversation with those around us. It will help you understand just how devious the opposition is in trying to wipe out the Constitution, especially the Second Amendment. And make no mistakes, they want the Second Amendment gone so they can dismantle the First Amendment and the rest of them.
Well, I agree with you. I think every gun owner in California, in fact, probably every gun owner in the country ought to read this decision precisely for the reasons that you expressed. And reading it last night, as you know, Rick, I'm super involved in this like you are. And
right.
I'm reading this decision thinking I'm not going to see anything new that I don't know about. But
and
reading
a
lot, reading the case of the veteran you're talking about and why he could not buy ammunition and the way that the judge actually used a metaphor that you have the main gate to walk through and then you have 4 different choices of doors for background checks. He can't get through the main gate because he can't prove that he's a U.S. citizen because he can't get a copy of his birth certificate because he was adopted and doesn't know who his birth father or birth mother were. And so as a result, he has a limited California driver's license that says federal limits apply. And in a state like California, where they regularly issue exactly those same driver's licenses to illegal aliens in this state, there's no way for him to prove that he's not in the country illegally, so he cannot get past the main gate, let alone pick a background check. So here's a guy who's a decorated veteran who can't, not only could he not buy a gun in this instance, he certainly can't buy ammunition, and he can't leave the state to buy ammunition because if he does and brings it back into the state, that in itself is a crime. So looking at the way the judge broke this out educated me. I mean, I thought, wow, I've heard people give me arguments about this, and now I have ammunition, no pun intended, to go back with and say, no, this is where this law has completely gone astray. And if you're watching this, you don't think that the California government is working its way to try to destroy the Second Amendment, look what it's doing to gun stores right now. I mean, right now, the range that I teach at, P2K, is closed. Well, it's closed as a range and it's closed as a store because DOJ has pulled some of their abilities to sell guns. So right now, I just read on their website the other day that not only can they not sell guns at the moment till this gets worked out, they can't cancel any of the current purchases. So they can't cancel the purchase so you can buy a gun someplace else because they don't have access to the DOJ website anymore. So if you bought a gun there, your money's still sitting there. You can't pick up your gun. They can't deliver the gun, and they can't cancel the purchase, which means if you want to go buy a gun down the street at a store that's open and then later go back and cancel that purchase, you can't do it because you can only buy 1 gun a month, and it still looks as if you have a gun on the record that you haven't picked up yet.
Which is amazing in itself when DOJ is saying we don't have access to the records, but we have access to the records when it's convenient to limit your abilities.
Right.
But when we can help you, we have no access because we don't have enough people. And oh, by the way, our computer systems with all your taxpayer monies can't do what the simple mom and pop shop is able to do on eBay.
Right. I mean, you could do it in a minute on eBay or using PayPal or whatever, right? I mean, it's an easy thing to do, but the state of California magically somehow can't get that done. And so there is a concerted effort in this state to destroy the Second Amendment rights of people. I love the judge when he points out that, yes, this was done by referendum, but the Bill of Rights and the Constitution exists specifically to keep our rights taken away by a majority rule, because that's the whole point. You can't, by referendum, remove someone's constitutionally protected rights. That's one of the arguments he makes in the decision. So I do encourage you to read it. I really do. Now that we know where we are, where are we headed? What's next?
So that's one of the things. I mean, a lot of people. I want to answer a couple questions. A lot of people are like, well, hey, can't we do a class action suit to get our money back that we've spent? And here's the answer, and you're not going to like it. No. The reason is because That was happening when that law was legal. The law became illegal when Judge Benitez handed this down yesterday. Anything that happened from it going to effect till last night when this judgment came down, as much as we dislike it, was legal under the law. So we're not going to be able to do a class action suit to get your money back at this point. What we are now doing is prepping, which we've been doing for a while, because we realize what this legal game is. And this is why we need so many people to be members, like you said earlier, of organizations, because while we appreciate everybody that's joining and donating and coming on to help us, this is for the next leg of the battle. And it would be better if we stopped it from ever having to go to these courtrooms. Because now what's going to happen is the governor and the governor and Becerra are going to sit there and examine this and say, all right, do we roll the dice? Now, odds are when they roll the dice at the Ninth Circuit, it will go to a 3-judge panel. And just like we're expecting a favorable ruling from the Duncan case here in the next week or two, we're going to look for the same thing, because the odds are with us that we will have at least 2 of the 3 judges siding with us, and possibly all 3. Because of Donald Trump being elected, the Ninth Circuit's face has went from being 75, 80% liberal to about 55, 45, and it's almost a 50-50, which is starting to give us what we call judicial parity. This is where this becomes an interesting game, because so then what would happen is there'd be another stay. We would go back to the ammo restrictions, and then we would get that 3-judge panel. The 3-judge panel, I'm sure, is going to uphold Benitez's opinion, because it is so well written. And this is why you want judges to take their time and not just flip this out really quick, because, no pun intended, this thing is pretty doggone near bulletproof. So now let's say we're 6-9 months down the road, the 3-judge panel says, yay, you guys are right. Now here's where this becomes really interesting in the politics, both locally and in the Ninth Circuit, which includes states like Idaho, Montana, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, California, Hawaii, Alaska, the Marianas, Guam, and I believe Arizona is in that mix too. What happens is, if the 11-judge panel of the en banc that they would try to get ends up favoring and upholding the lower 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit, now that automatically, when that decision comes down, becomes law of the land for all of those states within the Ninth Circuit. So the gamble at the en banc for the governor and Becerra is, do we roll the dice and take the chance of losing this in the Ninth Circuit and it becomes law of the Ninth Circuit, or do we keep this limited to California? Or do we push it knowing that it could go to the Supreme Court? If President Trump is reelected, that Supreme Court's going to look good for the next 3 to 7 years. If he's not, then you could have people like a couple of people like Ginsburg and others, finally resign. And at that point, the court could shift. And so that's what we're looking at right now, is trying to play that game on both sides of where this goes, because you don't want this to go to the Supreme Court and go in the wrong direction either, because then that becomes law of all 50 states, which is what the opposition wants. So that's why we're saying these cases in California aren't just about California. They're not just about the Ninth Circuit. This is literally the heart and soul of the Second Amendment nationwide.
So what happened with Freedom Week, so let's call this Freedom Week again. And let's hope it's not Freedom Week. Let's hope this is freedom forever. And, oh, by the way, if you see me looking around, it's because my whole thing is now changed here with multiple monitors. And I'm like, where do I look? So forgive me for that. If this becomes Freedom Week 2, and for some reason, I guess that's my question. Could this become Freedom Week 2 in the sense that this judgment, which essentially does not do away with the law, it just enjoins the state of California and law enforcement within the state from enforcing it. The law is still on the books. It doesn't declare it unconstitutional. It doesn't wipe it out. It doesn't take it off the books. What the judge has essentially done is said, by virtue of the fact that you are likely to prevail in your suit against this, it is not right for you as the citizens of California to have your rights completely destroyed while this goes through court. And so for that reason, he has prevented the state from enforcing the law while it works its way through court. And that's essentially what his decision has done. That being the case, is it possible that his act of enjoining the state and keeping them from enforcing it somehow then goes away? and it remains a law that's enforceable while it goes through court? That's essentially what happened with the mag ban.
Right. That's why I was trying to get. That's why I'm comparing the two cases, Joel, because I think we'll have this for at least a week, but we could be here a week from today, and by that point, Becerra appeals it to the Ninth Circuit, and at that point, depending on what the judge does, the judge may, as Benitez did in the last case, say, okay, this has been kicked up above my level. And so then they pull back this enjoyment. And at that point, everything goes back to where it was, yesterday morning. And we would then proceed under the older rules where you got to pay the money, get the license, go through the background check. Of course, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people denied because maybe their driver's license isn't exactly the same as it is in the DMV record, on a birth certificate, or on a utility bill. A lot of people have names like Gerald, but they go by Jerry. And so, their electric bill's in Jerry, but their driver's license is Gerald. And so all of a sudden they're like, oh, that's not the same person, even though they have the same birth date, same social security number, same address, same everything. The computer freaks out and says, oh, this is somebody trying to be an imposter. So, and Benitez talks about that as well within the decision, and how the system itself was never built or designed to help the law-abiding citizen. In fact, it's just the opposite. So the result of this would be it would go to a 3-judge panel in the Ninth Circuit. That's the comparison I was making to the Duncan case, which is the magazine ban, because we just had that hearing, and it looked very favorable by watching those 3 judges really tear the state attorney apart on several issues. So then when those decisions come down from the 3-judge panel, you would go back theoretically into another week. So that's why I've told some of my friends and close people like you, Joel, be prepared, because when that comes down, that will open that floodgate again to be able to go out and purchase things. But then the governor has that, what I was talking about earlier, that chance to roll the dice. Excuse the dogs in the background.
It's okay. I have dogs. It's okay. I have a dog, chickens. I get it. It's okay.
Keeping it real. But what happens at that point is then we end up in a situation where the judge would have to, in that case, 3 judges would have to say yes or no. Most likely they would say yes, they agree with Benitez. But then they can kick it up to 11-judge panel, which is called an en banc. And
then the 3-judge panel, or anywhere along these steps, and help me out here because I'm not an attorney, so I'm just trying to work my way through it. So right now, as we stand, the law is unenforceable because of Judge Benitez's ruling.
Correct.
However, if the state were to choose to appeal it to the Ninth Circuit, and it were to go to a Ninth Circuit where it can then agree to hear it or not.
Right.
And if the Ninth Circuit agrees to hear it, then either the Ninth Circuit or Judge Benitez could essentially wipe out Judge Benitez's decision, which brings us right back to where we were before, until the Ninth Circuit actually renders a brand new decision. And then if the Ninth Circuit renders a brand new decision and agrees with Judge Benitez, we're back where we are now again.
Right.
Unless and until that gets sent to the en banc 11-judge panel, in which case those justices could say, well, no, let's wipe that out because we need to decide it. And then we're back. We're doing this back and forth thing between having the law enforceable or not enforceable as we go through this fight. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah, you're getting that correct. And behind that sits the political apparatus. We have a governor who has made it very clear wants to run for president.
Yep.
So
God help us all.
Careful how far he pushes some of this stuff. But we also have to remember he got elected with a lot of money that came from Bloomberg and other groups that are against us. So there's that balancing act. And I think that's why you've seen so many onerous things done where the governor stayed, arm's distance away from what's went on with the gun stores and went, oh, that's the local county. That's not me. I told every county to make up your own. Well, it's funny because the counties that are much like him are the very ones that are going after the gun stores, and the ones that aren't. So it's not a real big shocker there. So what would happen there throughout this process is Becerra and the governor have to keep making decisions. Are they willing to roll the dice to try to get the win? And what I'm saying is that 3-judge panel in the Ninth Circuit right now, odds are pretty much in our favor. At the 11th, panel, the en banc, it's a coin toss.
Yeah, it's a 50-50 shot right about now with that. Yeah.
And what everybody's looking at is how long is POTUS, being Donald Trump, going to stay in office? Because the longer he stays in office, the more the Ninth Circuit is going to lean our direction.
The more the entire federal judicial system is going to lean our direction, honestly.
Right.
I mean, because McConnell is just cranking them out. There are over 200 justices he's appointed so far. And McConnell is he's following his little plan of let no vacancy be unfilled, or however he says it. And he's still cranking justices through. So you're right. The longer that Trump stays president, the better off we are. Where the Second Amendment is concerned.
That becomes a challenge right now because, we don't know where things are going to go with all the other stuff that's outside of what we're dealing with that's happening in the world today, what influences those will or won't have on the election. But that is part of the issue that we're facing right now, is trying to have the crystal ball to see where justices are going to line up on any of the cases that we're fighting as we move forward. And that's why it's so important to keep our crowd together. This is actually the fight that everybody claims that they want to be a part of, being one with our founding fathers. This is being one with your founding fathers. Yeah. It doesn't get any more real than this.
Now, we talked about the seesaw, right? We have our rights where ammo are concerned restored. Oops, we're back to square one again. Whoops, we've got them back. Whoops, we're back to square one again as this thing works its way through the court.
Right.
Is that a given, or is it possible that the 3-judge panel with the Ninth Circuit says, well, let's just leave that, still California, while we're deciding this, that injunction is in place and you cannot enforce this law unless we decide against you? Can it go that way, or is it a given that if they take the case, we automatically are back where we started?
So here's where we're at right now. If Benitez's ruling isn't messed with, everybody says, yeah, he's right, and the state says they give up, which they're not going to do.
No.
But had they done that, it would have just wiped the law out in California, and we'd be done. We could all and move on.
But it only affects California, right?
Right. But once they move it to the Ninth Circuit, now all those states I talked about and the territories of Guam and Mariana Islands are now being impacted by this.
So if the Ninth Circuit hears it and then decides that they agree with Judge Benitez, the law now becomes the law, not just for California, as you said, but for all of the states that are under the Ninth Circuit. And it's a large number of states and territories. Right. So that affects a good-sized chunk of the U.S.
Yeah, it's mixed politically. Some are very liberal, like Hawaii, and some are very conservative, like Montana and Idaho. So, there's very game that goes on.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I read the other day, and this changed the subject. Is there anything else that people need to know? Well, okay, so first of all, let's go back and I want to reiterate this statement. This is an incredible victory, but we're not done yet. So it's really tempting to think, okay, we have our rights back. We don't have to fight anymore. But that's not true. This is one battle in a longer war for our rights. We've won a battle. We've had a great victory, but let's not sit back and rest. What was that?
We had a touchdown, but the game's not over.
They had a great touchdown, actually, but you're right. The game's not over. We got to keep working on it. So, okay, so the next thing is I read the other day, and forgive me, I've been working a lot because practical defense systems, we're still running. We're considered essential because we're training security personnel, and security people are considered part of public safety. So we're still busy, and I've been busy as a result. So I haven't stayed on top of this as much as I would like to have. So please forgive me for that. But it seems to me the other day I read that that SCOTUS had agreed to hear yet another Second Amendment case. Is that true?
Yeah, there's been a couple different cases. To be honest, I haven't stayed up on those, because I've been working on the thing that you just brought up, which was the Essential Business version 3.0 that just came out from Homeland Security. I'm part of that committee, and so I've been working on that. So my head has been in trying to keep essential businesses in the CCW process, both for new purchasers of firearms and the renewal system in the state going.
And how is that going? Because I know it's a change of subject, but we might as well cover a couple things while we're here.
Yeah.
How is that going with the CCW thing? The reason I asked the question is because I just received an email yesterday or the day before. I may have received it before that, but I get about 200 emails a day. So I just saw it yesterday or the day before.
Right.
From a listener who actually it's a student now that I think about it, who is trying to renew his concealed carry permit with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, but the San Diego County Sheriff's Department is no longer accepting interviews or making appointments to renew any permits or to offer up and issue any new ones. They've essentially said, well, you're stuck until this is over, and then we'll open up and we'll try to get the backlog caught up afterwards. And if your permit is expired in the meantime, tough. Well, that really genuinely sucks. That leaves folks whose permits are about to expire without a means to renew them, and it leaves people who are in the middle of the process of renewing without the ability to renew them. And on top of that, most of the ranges are closed because you got to maintain a 6-foot distance, so they can't go qualify in order to renew their permit or get a new permit. I mean, it's basically shut down the entire system, at least in San Diego County. How's that going throughout the state?
Throughout the state, it's varied. And one of the things that's made this an interesting patchwork to have to fight, because we fight in all 58 counties, of course, as you know, Joel. And the problem has been the governor distanced himself from this, theoretically, because what he did was he said, this is up to each of the local counties to decide. Now, notice why I said counties. He didn't say specifically the sheriff. He didn't say specifically the health officer. He just left it to the counties. So in some counties, we're having to work with board of supervisors and the sheriff. Other counties, we're having to work with the sheriff and whoever heads up their health agency. Sometimes that's a nurse, sometimes that's a doctor, sometimes it's an EMS director. And obviously there's the different political leanings. And so it's interesting that, you know, you have San Diego that I would say is politically pink. It's not totally red, not totally blue. It depends what part of the county you're in. And, you know, the sheriff is making the calls that Sheriff Gore is making in that county, saying, hey, I'm trying to keep everybody safe, my personnel, all the people with CCWs. And that is going to, like in several other counties, create the issue of when the sheriff decides to go ahead and let the system start to crank over, you're going to have ranges that are backed up. We're not going to be able to go to what we did before because there's going to be social distancing foreseeably for the next at least year and a half, which is going to slow things down. And then you have counties just north of you like Orange, even farther north like Fresno, that literally have tens of thousands of CCW holders. So their renewal process is for 8,000 to 10,000 people just renewing every year, not counting the new ones coming in. So what we've seen is we've got counties up in the Bay Area who have been like San Diego and just cut the system off. We have other counties who have went to extraordinary lengths and said everybody picks up their licenses on one day. They bring out staff. They do it in a parking lot, social distancing, gloves, masks, the whole 9 yards to get taken care of. Here in Orange County, you can do the renewals, and there's no need to go get your picture taken to just using the same picture like DMV and doing it that way, but you're still doing the background check. Everything's done online using a system that is hopefully going to go statewide, but many law enforcement agencies are using called Permitium that allows them to get a lot of that stuff done without the face-to-face. So a lot of this in my book and my personal and professional opinion is how much the sheriff is willing to do to actually support the people with CCWs. And some of the sheriffs, I think, were able to kind of throw a bone to our community and say, oh, we're issuing. And now we're getting to see the sheriffs that really, truly believe because they pulled out all the stops. And I even know a couple of sheriffs in this state. I'll give a shout out to Sheriff Farrar, who's up in Solano County, who's literally had the person in charge of their CCW system travel 300 miles to other sheriffs to try to help them set up a system to continually make sure renewals and new CCWs are happening. So there's some sheriffs like him and former Shasta County Sheriff Tom Basenko and Margaret Mims out of Fresno and Don Barnes out of Orange County have all done incredible jobs of trying to make sure that people can at least renew and having a system either currently working in place or designed that the moment things relax, just start processing all these new people that have purchased firearms that want to come get CCWs. My big concern right now in our state has to do with what you brought up even with your own business. That's range time. And ranges have the issue of they are simply not going to have enough space or enough staff to handle everything. And so we could take some lessons from the archery community. Ironically, when those wonderful little movies with Katniss Everdeen came out, you know, everybody wanted to go take their daughter out and make her into an archer. And all of a sudden, those of us like to go to the archery range found ourselves waiting hours to get in the range because there were all these young ladies that wanted to go shoot. And of course, I'm not going to be the old bully hunter. No, kid, you can't do that. And go, sure, I can wait another hour and see them go. But our community in general isn't always kind when they don't have lane time at the regular range. And
no, they can be quite rude sometimes. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's part of my concern when I'm trying to educate people is we have a backlog of people who have been in the movement for quite a long time, but we have 1 million new gun owners in California since this pandemic started.
Right.
1 million. If only 10% decide to go to people like you, Joel, to actually become safe gun owners, and my prayer would be all 1 million did, but only 10%. That's 100,000 new people at ranges in the state. That's a significant number.
Right. That's an untenable number if you want to do it fast. It's going to have to stretch over time, and particularly with the new restrictions.
And we better be nice because those are votes. Right. Those are people that are going to walk away from this either, hey, everything that was said about this community was absolutely wrong. These are some of the nicest, kindest, giving people in the world, or we're going to affirm what the opposition has said about us.
Yeah, let's not.
I think that's the big test.
Yeah, let's not. It's interesting to me, too, when you add in the fact that the state of California has been actively trying to kill ranges for years and years and years and years. And so when you get right down to range space or bandwidth, if you want to call it that, whatever the word is, the availability of ranges to shoot at is fairly limited now. And when you add all those extra people plus the pent-up demand immediately thereafter when things are opened up again, it's going to be quite challenging, and those ranges are going to be very busy, which is good for the range because it'll help them recover some of the revenue they've lost. But we may also have ranges and gun stores that cannot reopen that simply go out of business because of this, which limits it even further.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're fighting, and I need everybody to understand this, I mean, none of us like the idea of somebody taking money out of our pocket. But one of the things our community forgets as law-abiding citizens is we are the only segment nationwide that does something unique. And that unique thing is that when we purchase firearms, hunting gear, camping gear, targets, etc., there's a little thing called Pittman-Robertson dollars. Those are our tax dollars. So that's right. You, me, and everyone's ever bought a firearm, ammunition, and a lot of the accessories has agreed to an extra tax. I want us to think about that for a moment. We have said it's okay that we're willing to pay more money. For what? That money goes, yes, to preserve wildlife, which means, as former Governor Jerry Brown said, gun owners have done more for conservation in the state of California than any of the other groups. And that includes all of the World Wildlife Funds, Greenpeace, et cetera, et cetera. It's us that has done it. But also a chunk of that money is to go to refurbish and build new ranges. And we're one of the few states to demand that money gets used. And during the Obama years, the vast majority of our dollars went back to Obama's general budget because we as California gun owners and sports people don't demand that money stays in our state. It's our money, and we need to start doing it. It's something CRPA has been working on for a couple of years now to get legislation, to get some lawsuits forward, because literally millions of dollars are being sent back that could go to expand ranges for these people and actually increase firearm safety and lower the number of accidents.
I want to go back to I agree with you, and that's something we need to be more focused on because there are states like Arizona that have beautiful ranges precisely because they do fight for that money.
Yeah, and it was paid for with Pittman.
And it was paid for with that money. We don't have them because we don't. Yeah, we don't fight for the money, right? Let's go back to the CCW point, though, and I want to raise this because it is not uncommon for me to hear from CCW people they've applied, they're business people or they're whatever. They're not necessarily Second Amendment advocates or gun people or whatever. They're people that want to be able to protect themselves, so they apply to get a concealed carry permit. And it is not uncommon for me to hear them say that they're actually perfectly fine with the whole permitting thing. They think people ought to get a permit in order to have to carry a gun concealed. Mm-hmm. Well, now we're in the middle of a pandemic. And the sheriffs aren't issuing the permits in many, many of the counties In my own county, the sheriff has closed up shop and said, well, if your permit expires, sorry, I'm not going to extend the life of the permit for you artificially and say those permits are now good until such and such. I'm just going to let them expire, and then we'll deal with it when the pandemic is over. Well, that could be months and months and months. That could be a year from now. Who knows when they get back to it again. This is the problem with the permission slip system when you have a constitutionally protected right that you have to genuflect in front of a government entity, when you have to go see a bureaucrat and you have to pay a fee and take a class and ask them very nicely if they'll let you exercise your constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms.
Right.
So if you are watching this channel right now and you're of the opinion that permits are okay, I want you to put yourself in the position of somebody right now who would love to go get one but cannot because we're in the middle of a natural disaster that's worldwide. Or somebody who has a permit and went through all the hassle and trouble to get one, which in California is not a small proposition or an inexpensive one for that matter,
Nope.
and now cannot simply renew their permit because it's coming due, but the sheriff isn't doing it anymore. And so as a result, you cannot, unless, and I'm fortunate, my permit doesn't expire until 2021, but if it was expiring this month, I'd be stuck and no longer would be able to exercise my constitutionally protected, God-given right, nature-given right, whatever you want to call it, to carry a firearm, even though the Constitution says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We've got to dismantle this permission slip system. Now, I realize California's tough, and it's going to be a while, but whatever state you're in, if you're not in California, I urge you to fight for that because it's like a juggernaut. I remember when concealed carry was not common. It started kind of in Florida, and shall issue was not common, and Marion Hammer really forced that through and with the NRA, and then it started working its way across the country. Well, the same thing is happening with constitutional carry, and that's where every state needs to be. We're not going to be there for a while, I don't think. But if you don't join CRPA and you don't help with these organizations, we'll never get there. And if you don't understand that here's the reason why we fight these battles, we will never get there. Now you know. So I urge you to act upon it. There you go. That was my second soapbox moment in this interview. Sorry about that. I'm not sorry about it. It needs to be said.
Apologize.
It needs to be said. Come on, folks. Let's grow up and realize that we need to fight for our rights or we won't have them. Is there anything else we should talk about that's going on in the state of California right now?
Wow.
Okay, well, you got an open mic, brother. Go for it.
So yeah, a couple of things that I think people need to realize too is that gun stores, like you said, are being challenged. A lot of those gun stores are not major groups like a Turner's or a Bass Pro. A lot of them are owned by families and operated by families, and some of them had to shut down because of the age of the people in the stores. But I think what's really important for people to start to realize is, I think a lot of Californians are getting antsy to get out of the stay-at-home orders. They're hearing the president this week talk about as the heat starts to increase for the summer, we could get out, we could start to do more things. Some of these businesses would be able to reopen. And that's all going to be very, very good. And I'm like anybody else excited to get back outside and be able to do the things I love. But if we're looking at how this has worked with other pandemics, be it smallpox or the Spanish flu epidemic and others, that means this winter, this is all going to roll back. And we need to start really looking at what California has done to overreach with an inept DOJ, an inept DMV, and all the different machinations at all the different counties. I think we've seen over and over. I mean, we're watched boards of supervisors remove sheriffs from lead roles, like in LA County. I'm not making a political judgment, good or bad, on that. We've watched, in some cases it's the county health officer, in other cases it's the sheriff, in other cases it is the board of supervisors. It is such a patchwork in this state and nationwide in this fight. So for those people that are watching this in other parts of the country, this is what we're fighting every day. And it literally has taken up the vast majority of our entire staff's time. And I'm not complaining, but it's literally, we get a victory in one county, and I've got 8 people from like Ventura County last night were contacting me saying, why haven't you done something in Ventura? We're literally fighting in 58 different counties. It's like 58 different states within this state. And that fight is not going to end at the end of April, end of May. we're looking at this fight's going to be at least 2 to 5 years, because if you listen to the rhetoric of the governor's office and, Congress, they've been able to expand powers and rights beyond the Second Amendment at an incredible rate. And folks, you need to be on guard. You need to be watching what's going on, because just as if you read this 120-page decision, Judge Benitez does an incredible job of painstakingly showing you how devious the opposition, the government, is to removing your constitutional rights. And it's not just the Second Amendment. It covers all the amendments. And he even points that out in this decision. And we need people to become, if anything, hyper vigilant and start educating, because a lot of people around us just flat out don't know. And the nice thing, if there could be anything nice from this pandemic, is we've been able to encourage a lot more conversations like we're having, Joel, by using video from 2 different locations to maintain the order, reach out to people. We're doing that through our chapters statewide, and we're educating people. And it's amazing. Instead of the numbers going down, the numbers are going in the opposite direction. More people are engaging us this way, and we're able to get the information out, because we need not just people joining, but we need those people to be committed and active, because the Second Amendment's there by our constitutional fathers to protect the rest of them. And when it falls, the whole shebang's going to fall.
Yeah, we're done.
Make no mistake, they're going after everything.
I have a couple of points. One people aren't going to like. Some people aren't going to like to hear me say this, but it is what it is. When it comes to these lawsuits, there are a lot of people out there that don't want to support the National Rifle Association. I get it. I understand all the reasons why. But the truth is, if you really want to be truthful about it, the National Rifle Association is the giant piggy bank that pays for most of these lawsuits. And there you can see Rick nodding his head.
Yep.
They're the giant piggy bank that everybody goes and gets money from in order to pay for these lawsuits. Now, there are organizations that write amicus briefs, or however they say it, and that's a pricey proposition. And to support the lawsuits, but somebody has to actually pay the court fees, pay the attorney and the law firms and all these other things to pay for these lawsuits. And if that money dries up, then these lawsuits come to an end.
And that is why they're going after the NRA nationally. They're trying to take away that banking system from this fight. Make no mistakes about it.
And so I think that needs to be said. People have to understand, if you kill the National Rifle Association, you have just killed the piggy bank that pays for the lawsuits that fight for our rights. So whatever other heartburn you may have with that organization, understand that there are a lot of people. I get people that have heartburn, but the ones that trouble me are the ones that are actively trying to kill it, and they're gun owners. If you kill the NRA, you have killed the piggy bank that pays for these things. You just have, because no other organization has the funds to do it. So that's one thing I wanted to point out to you. The other thing is, everybody's broke if they're not working. I get it. And so if you don't have any money to throw at this, then what are you doing? You're sitting at home because you're not working. Contact Rick, contact CRPA. Say, I don't have any money, but I got some time. What can I do to help? Would it help you, Rick, if people just volunteered time?
Tremendously.
How?
For example, we need to find where there's pockets of gun owners. I mean, let's be honest. There are people that enter this sport because they want to go learn how to hunt. Or, there's a lot of people that are gun owners because those firearms were handed down, their family heirlooms. They belong to a significant parent or grandparent, aunt, uncle, whoever it was. There are people that did it because it was something they did as a youth, and so they still have some of those firearms. They're not people that go to gun stores or gun shows every day. So they're very hard for organizations like ourselves, Gun Owners of California. Sam and I talk about this all the time. How do we connect to those people and help them out? And a lot of the ways we do that is people that listen to this show. People like that those are the people come to you and go, oh, hey, Joel, you're going to be at the gun show. Can you pick me up a box of ammo prior to, the restrictions are placed on that? And for years, a lot of us did that for people. But those are people that they don't get our information. They don't know what's going on. So one of the easiest ways is for you to take our information and spread the word, because that's what we have to do. We have to get this out there. So when somebody pops something off in a store, in a meeting, in a family gathering that is completely erroneous, you can give a logical, calm explanation of why that's not true. And that will help us turn the tide. For others, they're like, hey, I'm not making any money now, but I'd like to help out. We have train programs. We have all sorts of things. One of the biggest needs we need is to get more and more people trained to be a range safety officer. Because, one of the things that COVID-19 is doing is it's killing the summer camp system this year in this state. Because this is the time of the year that most of us have already trained all the staff that are going to start running summer camps the 3rd or 4th week of May through the first part of August. But guess what? We don't even know if we can open up those camps. So we're literally, what does that mean in California? That means roughly 240,000 youth that normally engage in the shooting sports, from scout camps to camps put on by, organizations like Cal Deer, Rocky Mountain Elk, and the list goes on. Boys clubs, Girl Scouts, 4-H, Future Farmers, etc., are being mothballed for a year or two, depending on how this virus goes out. And so the amount of damage being done by this pandemic throughout all of our lives is also focused on the Second Amendment. And we're trying to get this information to the next generation. And believe me, the state has no desire, zero, to actually try to help us train the next generation or to help these brand new gun owners.
No, if anything, they'd like them to turn their guns in and not have them anymore, or move out of the state, or take the guns out of the state, or whatever the case might be. In fact, frankly, I think they're quite distressed by the fact that we have so many new gun owners. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, come on now.
And that's why, I don't know if you saw, but that's why Assemblyman Santiago out of LA County literally called them potential racists, hate crime people who are panic driven, just like buying toilet paper.
Wow.
And all I could think of was, had I said those words about anybody else, I would have made national news for being the worst kind of cretin to ever walk the planet.
Well, you'd also lost your job. Right. That would have been the end of you. Yeah. I mean, you'd been maybe you'd get a job working at the local convenience store, but I'm not so sure you'd get that.
Yeah,
that would be it. It'd be time to retire, Rick. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
These folks get away with saying things that they should never be able to get away with saying. I agree with you. Well, we've covered an awful lot, and I've burned up a lot of your time. I really do appreciate your help. Thank you very much.
Because glad to be here.
Sometimes
it's always good to see you.
Oh, it's always good to see you too. I sometimes am concerned that folks, this is such a great victory, but it's not a complete one. And I wanted to make sure people understand it's not a complete victory. The fight goes on, and we need to continue fighting. Here's the other point I would make real quick, and then we'll wrap it up, is that there are a lot of folks who say, leave California, leave California, leave California. What are you doing still there? How can you possibly live there? Pack up and move. The fight is where the fight is, and you have to fight the battle where it is. You cannot go, if you just go someplace else and say, well, the enemy is over there, so I'm going to move over there, then the enemy is going to travel from over there to go get you. You have to go where the enemy is and fight the battle there. The enemy is in these restrictive states. California is but one.
Right.
So if you are here in California and you wish to fight this fight, then fight the fight, for crying out loud. Get in there with the rest of us and do that. And quit telling people to move. We have to stop encouraging people to do things which bring about our own constitutional demise, because that's what we do on a regular basis. And like I said,
and realize it's not.
Go ahead.
It's not just us that moves. It's also the liberal elites that ironically say they can't take the taxes and the price of housing in the Bay Area, and then they move to places like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Houston, and Austin, Texas, and now they're like, oh wait, we want the same laws that screwed us up back in California here, and now they're screwing those states up.
Right, then that's what they do, is they move from state to state and they screw it up with gun laws, liberal laws, whatever. They don't stop believing what they believe when they change locations. They just go to a new venue and turn it into what they left. And the thing that baffles me is they never quite realize that the problem is them. You know, I always ask myself when people say, well, I've had this problem in my life, and then I had it here, and I had it here, and I had it here, and I had it here. And I always ask them the simple question, who was there every time this happened to you? And a lot of times they'll look at me and go, well, I don't know, nobody was there every time. Well, yeah, no, there was one person who was there every single time this happened to you. And eventually it'll dawn on them, well, the only person that was there every time this happened to me was me. Well, then maybe you ought to look in the mirror and change you. But they're not going to do that, and we have to understand they're not going to do that. So we have to fight the battle where the battle is. And right now the battle is in restrictive states. California is one. I'm staying. I'm going to stay here and fight it. Please stop going on my channel and commenting. Just move. I'm staying. Surprisingly, this man that's on the screen with me right now is staying.
Yep.
He's my brother in arms in this fight, and we will fight together until we drop.
Right.
I suggest you help. So with that, thank you very much, Rick, for all of your help today. Keep up the good fight. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you, and if there's anything new coming on, just send me a text or an email or whatever. We'll have you back on the show. As Rick said, I am going to have Sam Paredes on in a couple of days because I have a feeling this is going to be very fluid. And so Sam's got some time. I'll have Sam on to give us an update here in a few days, and Rick will probably come back. We may, if I can talk Chuck into coming on, give us some details.
I'm going to try to get Chuck on for you later this week. So.
Yeah, that would be great. And then Chuck, you know, Chuck's the brainiac where the law is concerned. He'll give us some legal beagle stuff and actually speak English while he's doing it.
Yeah, he's great.
He's terrific. He really is. Thank you, Rick. Have a great week. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate you staying with me this entire time. Have a wonderful week, and wherever you go, whatever you do, please be safe.